second annual social media webinar. I'm Sarah Michelson. I'm a policy counsel with Raposo Associates, and we work with the National Rural Housing Coalition to help manage their work. Before we get started, I want to just give people some time to log on. I know it's a long process, but I wanted to thank Capital One for their support of this webinar and also of the National Rural Housing Coalition. With their support, we were able to put this on for you guys today. We're really excited about our event today. In addition to myself, we'll have Wendy Puckett and Malcolm Bailey from Frontier Housing, who are going to talk about how their organization has incorporated social media strategically into their missions. Before we get started, I do want to give you a little background information on why we're hosting this event. Let me see if I go. Okay. So first, we did a little research to see how well our members were using Facebook to begin with. We went to every member's Facebook page to see what was working and what the biggest challenges seemed to be. And we found that about half of all of our members didn't have a Facebook page at all or weren't using it consistently. And by that I mean that they weren't posting at least once a week. So that was a pretty big number. That's about 5 times greater than the national average, which is about 10%. We also learned that about 30% of our members had a Facebook page, but didn't seem to use it for advocacy or hadn't adopted certain best practices when it comes to how, when, and what to post on Facebook. So they weren't using it to the fullest potential. From our perspective, at least, this means that there's a really big opportunity for rural housing coalitions and groups to enter this space. And so we've tailored this webinar to help those groups that want to start using social media or that want to improve it. We also held a webinar last year, and during that we polled our members on what they saw as being the biggest challenge to maintaining an effective and consistent and engaging Facebook page. And the majority of them said that it was a lack of strategy and a limited resources that really was the biggest impediment. So again, today we're going to spend a lot of time on how you can create a strategy within the scope of your organization's limited resources. That's also why we invited Wendy and Malcolm to join us. They've done a really great job at maintaining their Facebook page, and all with very limited staff and resources. They'll go into this in a little bit more detail later, but in my opinion, Frontier Housing is a really great model for organizations that might not have the resources to hire a full-time social media staff member, but they still recognize that social media is really important to their missions. I also want to give a little background on just the basics of how the webinar is going to work today. At the end of each speaker, we'll have time for questions and answers, and you can feel free to enter your questions at the bottom right-hand of your dashboard for the webinar. We'll also be recording this session as well as sending out a copy of the presentation, so everybody should be able to get a copy of it afterwards. All right, we'll go right into it. My presentation really, the goal is to take you through a step-by-step process on how you can create a social media strategy. And throughout it, I'm going to use the National Rural Housing Coalition as an example that you can look to. So step 1 is learning the basics. Before you even get to creating a strategy, it's really important to take some time to get familiar with the various social media platforms that are out there, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Each of them have a very unique audience and also have a unique style and tone that goes with it. So it's important that you know what the expected personality and tone is on each of them before you choose which one's best for you. For this presentation, I'm going to focus on Facebook. It's the largest and most active social media platform, which means that hundreds of millions of people every day are already connecting with each other and with nonprofits and the issues that they care about by sharing photos and videos and news stories. They're already doing that. I do want to remind you that there is a gap between urban and rural users of social media, but rural communities are definitely using it. This means that every organization, including those that serve rural America, are going to find that having a social media presence is important and can help support your mission. And that's because your communities are already engaging on it. So the next step beyond learning the basics of what platforms are out there is figuring out what your objectives are for using social media and then who your audience is. So Do you want to use social media to find new volunteers? Are you trying to raise money online? Do you want to connect with the families that you serve or advertise events, raise awareness of rural housing programs, or build relationships with your members of Congress? So all of these objectives should be directly linked to the mission of your organization. And then from those objectives, you'll be able to figure out who your audience is and where they are on social media. It also is going to inform your decision about how you choose to engage these members or these individuals' audiences on a daily basis. So for the National Rural Housing Coalition, we're an advocacy and membership group. Our objectives are raising awareness of rural housing programs, the work of our members, mobilizing supporters, building relationships with members of Congress, and recruiting new members. So that means our audience are existing members, other rural housing advocates and organizations, and members of Congress or federal agencies. It also means that because of that, and because we know where our audience is, we should consider using Facebook and Twitter because that's where our audience already is engaging. If your objective, for example, is to cultivate volunteers, you need to think about whether or not that means college and high school students, or if you're talking about retirees or church groups. If your audience is on the younger side, you might want to focus on Twitter or Instagram instead of Facebook because that's where younger audiences tend to be. And if you're focusing, if your audience is mostly business professionals, then something like LinkedIn might work better for you. So for right now, I'm going to launch a poll to figure out what your objectives are for using social media. You should see that on your screen right now. And if you could, just take a couple of seconds to answer and click all the ones that apply. And I'll give you guys about 10 more seconds to kind of log in. Okay, so the votes are still coming in, but we're definitely seeing some trends, which is that about 60% of you guys say that raising awareness of rural housing issues is a key objective of what you want to do on Facebook. Another one, 81% say advertising events or connecting with constituents. So that's great. We'll move on. The next step in your strategy needs to focus on how you're going to allocate staff and resources. These are things that are always tight at nonprofits, so it's okay to pare it down to what resources you have available to you. My first tip to you guys is to try to split administrative duties between at least 2 or 3 staff. And the reason for this is these are the staff members who are responsible for posting content on Facebook, but they also have access to passwords. And if someone goes out of town or has an emergency that takes them out of the office, you'll still need to be able to access your social media accounts. Once you have your administrators, you want to devise a plan for creating content. And for a lot of organizations, this is the most difficult part. And as you can see from this chart, it's a very simple one. You can split up your social media responsibilities among those staff to make it more manageable. In this case, I broke it down by each social media platform and the roles that people could play. So whether they were admins and then therefore expected to create content for that social media platform, or if they play more supportive roles. But like any other project, it's really important for you to know which staff are responsible for what and to hold them accountable to it. In larger organizations, you'll need a plan to get content from all the other departments in your organization. In these cases, you might want to identify a staff member from each department who can help create content, but whose content will be reviewed by a social media admin before it actually gets posted. I do want to say a quick word about interns. There's a real temptation to put interns in charge of your social media, but this really needs to be an experienced staff member. Interns don't really know your organization well enough to know what your goals are, or who your audience is, or the best way to represent your organization online. Also, interns come and go, and when they do, you don't want to have an inconsistent voice on social media. You want to keep that going. For NRHC, we're a really small operation, so we needed a social media plan that was very limited and targeted. So for us, we post on Facebook about 3 or 4 times a week, and we blog only when there's important news that's too long to be shared in a Facebook post on its own. The next thing you'll want to consider is tracking your performance. And social media sites, including Facebook, give you free, easy-to-use tools to track your performance. On Facebook, you can track the number of people that engage with your Facebook page by liking, commenting, or sharing your posts, the number of people that your posts have reached, and the number of people that click through the content. You can even see how many people unlike your Facebook page, which is a really good indicator if you're posting too often or if your content isn't really engaging enough. You can also see demographic information about your fans, including their age and gender and the city and state that they live in. Something that I use, you can see on this next slide, is a function that lets you see which posts get the most engagement. So over time, you can learn what your audience likes to see from you. From NRHC's side, we learned that our fans really like pictures of families that have built their own housing through self-help housing or other success stories. They like when we share good news and awards that our other members have received, or when we discuss some political news. Let's go back for a second, actually. The important thing to remember is that these metrics really aren't important in and of themselves. We're using these to help bring back to the objectives that we identified in the first slide. So for NRHC, again, yes, we want engagement, but ultimately we want people to sign up for our e-newsletter or to become members, or when we have an advocacy project like a petition, that we've already laid the groundwork in terms of connecting with them so that they're more likely to want to participate and support us. So as you can see from this tracking performance chart, our goals were to increase the number of our Facebook fans, but also to get new subscribers, etc. So we keep track of that on a monthly basis. And that's just an example of how you can do it. The next thing you're going to need to do is create a visual brand and integrate it across all of your communications. So every Facebook page is going to need 2 things. The first thing is a square avatar. That's going to be, as you can see in the bottom left-hand corner. So this example I got from Self-Help Enterprises, and it's very good because it's easily recognizable. It's very simple. That's really important because social media users are very visual, and they're going to recognize your branding even before they recognize your organization's name. That's because it's going to come up at every time you post. They're going to see that image. You can also see that Self-Help Enterprises, I put their logo at the bottom. They really just reconfigured their existing logo so it fit into that square avatar shape. The next thing you have to have is a compelling cover photo. So this example comes from LISC, another of one of our members, and it really focuses on the people that they work with and the people that they serve. I've seen a lot of rural housing groups use photos of the buildings, of the homes that they've actually built, but this is one of the first visual clues that you're going to give the public about what your organization does and what it represents. So, obviously you build housing, but you need to look towards that greater purpose, which is serving low-income families and building your community. So try to pick a photo that really embraces those things. So once you have those 2 items, you're going to want to integrate your social media across your other communications. So this example comes from a member of ours, Milford Housing Development Corporation, and you can see on every single page of their website, rather, they have these large buttons to donate and to volunteer. At the bottom, they have an opportunity for everybody to subscribe to their newsletter, and that's on, like I said, every single page. Now, they didn't do this, but this is something that they could do, which is provide buttons that bring you directly to their Facebook page. They have an excellent Facebook page, but they could probably drive more traffic to it if they had an easy way for people to get to it. Another example of bringing your visual brand across all your mediums is this newsletter from NeighborWorks. You can see in the upper left-hand corner they have their square avatar that they keep consistently on every item that they have, and they have this beautiful banner with links to their Facebook page and Twitter and LinkedIn. Okay. This is an example of how a blog has done it. This is Fahi from Kentucky. They have these really great huge buttons at the very top. Again, their avatar at the top left. Not only that, on the left-hand side, there's a button to donate, a way to sign up for their newsletter, and also tweets that they put out. The other thing that they do really well is they include these really big, beautiful images with every single post, and that really draws people in the first place. The next one is carrying your branding across other social media platforms as well. So this is an example from Habitat for Humanity, another member of ours, and they use the same avatar in the bottom left-hand corner and the same cover image as they do on their Facebook page and their Twitter. Now, each of those social media sites have their own rules about the size of the image, and later on in our resources, we'll provide a little cheat sheet for you. So the next element is creating a social media calendar. And if you already have a communications calendar for your organization, this is going to be really easily adaptable for you. The really important things to remember is to allow flexibility in case news comes up or memes come up that you want to play on. You really can't micromanage how Facebook works in the posts. The other thing I just want to point out is that you really should limit yourself to about 3 or 4 posts a week. The biggest reasons why people unlike a Facebook page is when you post too often, or if your posts read too much like they're marketing ploys. People aren't on Facebook for that reason. They want to have authentic, engaging conversations with the issues that they care about, and so you need to keep that in mind. Okay, so everything we've discussed so far has happened before we've even posted a single thing onto Facebook. So now we're going to talk about how do we create the content. And I mentioned this before, but it is one of the hardest things that organizations seem to have trouble with. But the simple rule is to think about what your fans want and not necessarily the content that you want them to have. So it's a delicate balance between the two. And earlier we talked about using those metrics to kind of figure out what your fans want. And it's a learning process, so it might take a while, but you'll get clues along the way by looking at your metrics. I did want to share a couple examples of the types of content that seems to work well across all organizations. So the first one is inspirational quotes. It sounds a little cheesy, but people love this, and they love interacting with Facebook posts that include this. So you can see on the left-hand side, we took a photo, or we used a photo of a family that built their own home under the self-help housing program at one of our members organizations, Coachella Valley Housing Coalition, and we put a quote from them about their experience. People love that. On the right-hand side, when Robin Williams passed away, Facebook was really lit up, and so we added a quote from one of the movies that he was in with a great image about making a difference in your community. Okay, the next one are memes, and people love it. This is very creative. You can have a lot of fun with this. This one also comes from Fahi. They were playing on a meme that was going around about Tim Howard, the star goalie of the U.S. World Cup team. And at the time, there were a lot of images of Tim Howard saving different things. So they put their own stamp on it, and they have Tim Howard saving Appalachia from poverty. But they linked back to a blog that was much more serious, but this was a good way of getting people through the door. The next thing we have is current events. So again, we took a quote. This was from Julian Castro as he was being sworn in as the Secretary of HUD. It's a quote of his about the American dream, and we asked an open-ended question about whether or not our members agreed with him or not. And the last one is infographics, and there's a free resource called PictoChart that you can use that lets you, design your own infographics, and they can make really powerful images that people seem to gravitate towards. The good thing is that you don't have to create all of your content on your own. You should share posts from other organizations, including the Rural Housing Coalition. It's a good way to build some goodwill with other organizations as long as you give credit where credit's due by tagging them in the post. Finally, step 8 is to adapt, and it's really important that you keep in mind that things on social media change a lot. So it's important to review your goals and your performance metrics and to experiment, see whether or not changing your tone increases the engagement that you have. People want constantly new things on Facebook and social media, so you don't want your posts to become stale. So it's important to use creativity and adapt to new circumstances. And to help you do that, I have a list of NRHC members and other organizations that have really excellent Facebook pages. Check them out sometime, see what they do. And then finally, I have some resources that you can use, including some of our toolkits that give very specific details about what you can do to use social media in your advocacy, as well as what we talked about today. I did want to remind you that we provide free social media technical assistance to all NRHC members. So if you're a member of ours, feel free to give us a call anytime. And if you're not a member, that's something you can consider when, figuring out whether or not you want to join. So for right now, I'm going to open the floor up to any questions that you might have. You can enter that at the bottom of the page. And I'll give a minute to just look through them if that's okay. So somebody asked about how they can target the audience that they want on Facebook. So like I said before, if you know who your audience is, you need to pay attention to little details that will help you really engage with them. The more you're looking at the feedback that you get from your performance metrics, and you see which posts you're getting the most engagement from, the more they're going to be sharing it with other people who are similarly minded, and the more those people are going to like your Facebook page. It's all very circular. It also goes back to those other communications that you're integrating into. So the more people who are on your Facebook page, the more likely they're going to sign up for your newsletter, the more likely they're going to read your blog, and vice versa. It goes all the way around. Let me see if there are any other. Another question is about how we feel about paying for advertising on Facebook. So Facebook definitely seems like it is moving towards the trend of requiring or making it in your interest to pay for to advertise on Facebook or boost your posts. Right now, they just put out a new algorithm for Facebook, and about 5 or 10% of your fans will see any given post. That really minimizes the impact that you have, but there are certain things that you can do on your own without paying for it to help boost your engagement. And those are things like posting images or posting links to credible news sites. Those are things that Facebook seems to be rewarding, so you should play into that and use those as much as possible. And we have a advocacy toolkit that we put out earlier that kind of touched on that too. The question about whether or not to pay for posts on Facebook, that's really up to every organization. If you have the budget, it doesn't hurt, but we try to do as much as we can without paying for it. So somebody asked a question about whether or not we recommend blogging in lieu of Facebook or in addition to Facebook, and vice versa. And it really depends on who your audience is, but my leaning, at least for this group, the rural housing groups, would be to use Facebook to post and to still do your blogs if you want to do blogs, but to post to your blog on Facebook. So include a link and include a little, post, very short post, but that they can link to it and read the more in-depth content. Otherwise, people, when they see a huge block of text like a post might have, they kind of get turned off, So breaking it down to pull in people who might, otherwise be turned off by a lot of text. That's a way I would do it. Let's see if we have any other questions. A question about who we should contact for technical assistance at the Rural Housing Coalition. You can reach out to me. You guys should have my email address, but if not, I'll send out an email when I share the presentation so that with my email address you can have it. I think for now we're going to move on to our next speaker. Wendy Puckett and Malcolm Bailey from Frontier Housing are joining us. Like I mentioned earlier, they have a really good Facebook model for an organization that has very limited resources and limited time. So I'm going to turn it over to Wendy.
Thank you, Sarah. I just wanted to talk a little bit about Frontier and where we were when we first started doing Facebook, which is what we do most of the time. We do very little Twitter. When we first started, we were very inconsistent. We really didn't have a plan. We were kind of all over the place with how we approached it. So our marketing team sat down and said, if we're going to do it, we need to do this right. So we kind of developed a plan that kind of guides us on a week-to-week basis, and I'm going to give it to Malcolm here in just a minute and let him talk a little bit about that. The early challenges that we saw with our Facebook was obviously coming up with relevant content. That was our biggest challenge. And then once we did come up with the relevant content, it was hard to get everybody to agree on what should actually be posted, because we do go through a process of our marketing team looking at what posts we do each week. And keeping with our timelines was rather challenging also. So we decided to get really serious about it and make a plan and get it together and do it the right way. And in doing so, it was hard to determine which staff member or which group should be looking at this each week. So because we do have AmeriCorps Vista members with us, we chose them to take the lead on our social media, because we do have a small staff and our Vista members are capacity builders. We've had pretty good success using them in this role. They bring a young, fresh perspective that veteran affordable housing people may not have. They're fresh, they're young, they're out, seeing what's going on out there. So they bring a different perspective. So that's kind of where we started. So I'm going to hand it over to Malcolm now and let him kind of go through our process and how we approach it on a weekly basis. Malcolm?
Okay. Hello. First thing that I wanted to get into is just a little bit about how we approach Facebook. First of all, here's our cover photo. We got it on a website called, or we created it on a website called PosterFuse, where you can create free images. And here we've got, a representative image of what we do. We have 3 families that we've served, and we've got homes that we've built, and we've got our logo as our avatar and our color palette. And it's really a representation of who we are, what we do, and what our values are. And next slide, please. Our objectives, because we serve people directly, is to increase intake, to have more people come into the office. And so our audience is going to be potential customers and people who would refer them to us. And so through Facebook, we want to get these people interested in what we're doing and also help them understand what we do. And we're going through a rebranding right now, and we want to change a lot of what we perceive the perception of us to be. And we want to also, as an objective, generate buzz around a lot of community events that we do and services we provide. Next slide, please. So Wendy talked a little bit about how we only use Facebook, and it's really because the main reason is because it's the platform of choice for our market. Through our research on our activity tab on Facebook, which shows the metrics, and through further research online, we've discovered that our audience is on there most of the time, and more so than on Twitter or YouTube or LinkedIn or what have you. And we also only use Facebook because we have a small staff, and it's hard to be using all these different platforms when you only have so much time to dedicate to content creation and going out in the field and sharing posts and all these things. And we want our posts to be top notch. We don't want to just create fluff week after week and hope that it sticks. We want to create engaging content that's meaningful and gets people excited about the work we do. Next slide, please. So our process that we have kind of implemented this year is to, what I'll do is it takes me about 4 or 5 hours a week. I'll create and I'll create the content for every business day mostly, and if we miss a day, it's not that big of a deal. And we'll meet every Thursday at 9 to look at the posts and tweak them a little bit and brainstorm, see what's going on in the next week or the next month and plan for it. And that takes about an hour. And sometimes, some high-profile person might walk into the office, or we might have an event in town, and these spontaneous posts will take precedence over posts that we had scheduled. We think that they're more important and more timely and meaningful. So here's a look at 1 week, what we've done. We had some people coming to the office, as you can see in the first post, and we thought that was worth mentioning. We want to get more people on our mailing list. We have a sales pitch post, which we usually do, once a week or every other week, because like Sarah said, you don't want to just be marketing to these people who want engaging content, who want a meaningful dialogue with you. We have people in a lot of these pictures, as you can see. That's really important. There's a stock photo at the last post, and the post above that's an actual family we served. And I wrote a story on them that we have on our website, and that link brings traffic to our website. So here's just a sample of what I do every week. Next post, or next slide, please. So I'm just going to run through some tips that I thought would be helpful for people just starting out. We've found through our research that that posts under 300 characters usually are best. That we're not saying that people are or don't want to pay attention or whatever, but social media is a pretty fast-paced environment, and you want to not be taking too much time to talk about what you're talking about. You want to be conversational. You don't want, and that depends on your audience, of course, of what choice of words you'll use. But in our case, we're connecting with potential customers, so we want to be conversational. We want to avoid jargon. It's also important to know what your audience is interested in. You might look at a couple people who are fans of your page and see what they're sharing and liking, and try to get a feel for what they really prefer to see. And maybe you don't want to change your identity, but you do want to match what their interests are to get more engagement. And like I said in the past slide, pictures are always a plus. And as Sarah said, people on social media are very visual. They want to see people pictures. Having a few content categories, like I demonstrated in the last slide, is really helpful for creating content and keeps you from going into a lull. I actually have a whole bunch of different categories that I look at every week to get the juices flowing. And it's important to share posts from partners because it deepens partnerships. It shows, and we probably don't do it as much as we should, and I want to get back on that really. to create connections among mutual fans. It shows people, it shows that, you know, these are organizations who are doing work together, and it shows the alliances. It's also important to know how to share a link, which I'm going to show you in the next slide. So Facebook recently changed this, and I think it's a helpful piece of information to know. When you want to share a link and you don't want to sacrifice not having a picture, or you don't want to not have a picture, you're gonna type the link in first, and then a preview will pop up of the link. You can actually delete the link after the preview pops up, and the preview will stay, and people will still be able to click the preview and get to the link. You can use these arrows in the second red box to change whatever picture is on that website, or you can actually even upload your own picture. And the last box, you can edit the title of the link or the content preview if you need to do that. And I put a little message at the bottom that you should link to your website often, because social media is a good way to bring traffic to your website, not just the other way around. Next slide, please. So since we've implemented this process, we've really increased the amount of people who like our page. I had it start when I started doing this new process, and we've increased our likes by over 50%. But what I really wanted to bring your attention to is this little part in the middle where we just got a spike. And if you go to the next slide, I'll show you why that is. So we put this campaign on our Facebook, and we told all of our fans to like and share to help us reach 750 likes, and it worked. Worked really well, as you can see, and we got like 30 or 40 likes in one day. So you should try this out when you get some fans, and it might work for you too. Next slide, please. But you need to be wary of some potentially difficult situations. And these haven't happened to us, but it's important to keep them in mind and know how to react if something like this were to happen. If someone writes something hateful or offensive, delete it immediately. You don't want that on your page, obviously. And this is my educated opinion, that you should delete posts with disputed photo rights, even if they're your own photos. You just don't want that kind of bad publicity. But it's important to engage commenters who have legitimate complaints. If someone gets on your page and claims that you did them wrong in some way, you shouldn't delete the post, because that's apparent censorship. You want to engage them respectfully, try your best to resolve the issue, and provide the office phone number on your reply to their post. And that should lead to a better situation. And that's all for my presentation. Are there any questions?
And remember, you can ask your questions by typing it in at the bottom right-hand side of your dashboard. This is a really good opportunity for you if you're trying to figure out how you would do this, in real life, to ask somebody who's been there and who does a great job at it.
Sarah, I can't actually see the questions. Could you feed them to me?
I can see them, and I'll pass them along. I'm just going to give people a moment to join on, or to type them in. So somebody asked, how did you know that you guys were being successful at your social media? What kinds of things did you look at when you were figuring out as evidence of your success?
We actually don't use the metrics as much as people recommend. We really go on just the day-by-day, how many people are liking and commenting on our posts and how many likes we get. I guess that's really all the metrics we use, and it seems like it's working. It seems like our page is just more. It's just gotten richer, I guess, in the way that people are engaging with it, and it's really an investment. And the more time you invest, and the greater your content is, the better engagement you'll get, and the better your page will be.
Mm-hmm. We have another question who's asking whether it's okay for their organization to borrow your idea, which was to ask their fans to help them get to a certain number of likes.
Absolutely, and that's not our original idea. We probably, or we took that from somewhere else. Actually, if you want to go back to that slide, I stole the idea of the asterisk and then some words down at the bottom from I think it was UNICEF. They said something like our page and we will feed 0 children. And then it said something about how likes are great, but they don't help our mission. Go to this page and donate. And so it wasn't really exactly the same, but it was sort of that idea. And yes, you are very welcome to steal that idea from us, because we stole it ourselves.
I'd also say, just to let you know, social media is very collaborative and creative, and once you put something on Facebook, it's free for anyone to really kind of play off of it, and it's actually encouraged. Like I said, those memes were kind of things that everyone was just organically responding to, and so I think I'd really encourage you to feel free to borrow or do anything that we do or other groups do. I think it's fair game. Let's see if we have other questions. We have questions about whether or not you've ever tried to boost your audience on Facebook, and I think that they're referring to maybe boosting the number of fans that you had, and we just talked about that as a strategy. But have there been other things that worked really well for you guys in terms of getting new fans?
We have boosted posts before. I don't know if we've boosted our fans before, but would you say we've done?
Yeah, we've boosted individual posts with mixed response. I think we get our best return when we engage, when we ask an open-ended question, or we have a little mini contest where we're given a small prize.
Yeah. If you're going to do contests, be sure to look into Facebook's policy on that, because it's easy to break the rules.
Great. Are there any other questions? I do see some questions that are very technical, so I'll be responding to those people individually afterwards. But does anyone have any other questions for our speakers? I'll give you guys a second more to ask any questions that you might have. So I think that's all for today. Thank you guys so much for participating. We had a good time. I know I did. If you have any other questions, feel free to contact me at any time. I'll be sending the PowerPoint presentation as well as a recording of this webinar out to everybody who attended. Also, as you saw earlier, there's a handful of links and resources that I pointed to. You'll be able to reach those also through the email. Thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to working with you guys in the future.
Thank you, Sarah.